It is a multi-billion-dollar business. And Los Angeles, unfortunately, has a tragic distinction of being one of the nation's capitals of human trafficking. Now, what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is the illegal commercial exploitation by force, fear, fraud, or coercion of individuals for either sex purposes or labor purposes. And the reason we are here in this Figueroa corridor is especially to call attention to where it is located. It is located up and down the blocks of where we are standing right now. You will see in both the press release, we have hyperlinked videos showing that showing that what we are talking about the young girls or women who are engaged in this sex exploitation by pimps and human traffickers that is occurring right here. The photographs you have on either side of this podium are ones taken from this spot. Now, this used to be an activity, but the only time you could see it was at night, but not anymore. These photographs were taken during the day. And it's usually young girls and women that represent over 95% of the human trafficking, the sex slave population out there. They are some of the most vulnerable population in our society that have no defenses, that are getting recruited by these traffickers on the internet. They are runaways. They are people from the foster system, where they basically aged out of the foster system and ended up right here on these streets. This is completely unacceptable. This is disgraceful. And what you will hear is that there have been regional task forces that have worked incredibly hard to bring these human traffickers to justice. There's the Los Angeles South Bureau Human Trafficking Task Force. There's the Los Angeles County Regional Human Trafficking Task Force. We are joined here today by members of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, the Long Beach City Attorney's Office, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, the Los Angeles Police Department. We are joined by members of the District Attorney of Los Angeles County's office. We are joined as well by the Pomona Police Department Chief Michael Ellis, the Southgate Police Department Chief Darren Arakawa, and the Inglewood Police Department Chief Mark Fronterata. And we are joined as a unified front because I want to send a message to the human traffickers who are engaging in these despicable acts. The question is not if, but when you will be arrested, when you will be prosecuted, and when you will be sentenced. And when you are sentenced, we are going to seek the maximum punishment. Let me give you an idea what that looks like. Recently, we have brought a case against Darren Atkins. Darren Atkins engaged, as the charges have shown, in human trafficking, sex trafficking, right here on this Figueroa corridor, involving a minor, a young girl under the age of 18, and one just over the age of 18. Darren Atkins, as the charges establish or will establish in court, and I want to make it very clear when we talk about charges are not evidence. Charges are not evidence. Everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But we will prove these people guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in court. And Darren Atkins will be looking, because of his background, at 70 years to life in prison if convicted on all charges. Fabian Gilbert was charged recently, again, with respect to a felony count of pandering and one count of felony possession of a firearm. He faces a special allegation of a felony offense while out on bail. He is looking at 8 years and 8 months as a maximum term in prison. Kevin Thomas has been charged recently for involvement with various types of human trafficking offenses. He is looking at a maximum sentence of 12 years in prison. And those are the ones we have recently gone ahead and charged with these crimes. But over the last 6 months, there have been a number of individuals that the human trafficking task forces have arrested, the DA's office has prosecuted, and actually received very long sentences. Let me give you a few examples. Tyrell Davenport, convicted on all charges, 2 counts of human sex trafficking, 1 count of human sex trafficking as a minor. And the reason that's important is that the state legislature recently passed legislation that said if you are involved with human trafficking of a minor, someone under 18, that is a serious and violent offense and constitutes a strike offense. So if you have 2 prior violent and serious crimes on your record, and this is your 3rd, you will now be looking at a sentence up to life in prison. And let me give you an example, using Mr. Davenport's facts that were proven to a jury of the type of situation that we are facing here on the Figueroa corridor. Mr. Davenport forced one of his victims to travel with him to different areas, held her against her will, threatened her with violence, used physical force to assault her and coerce her to work as his sex slave. He then branded her with a tattoo of his trafficking moniker, IBN. He put that IBN on her body. It stood for It's Better Now. It didn't stand for It's Better Now. It stand for Mr. Davenport engaged in one of the more despicable acts you can engage in our society with that victim. And because he had 2 prior strikes, Mr. Davenport was sentenced to 75 years to life. Martell Neal, again, another individual recently in the last 6 months who's been convicted on all charges involving human trafficking, pimping, kidnapping, sexual battery, and forcible rape. He was sentenced to 87 years to life. He was a serial sexual offender and a violent sex trafficker. He duped one minor individual into a sexual relationship, quickly morphed into her pimp, and sex trafficked her for several months. He repeatedly beat, strangled, violently sexually assaulted, threatened to kill this victim, and held her small child captive as a means of forcing her to continue working in the sex trade for his financial benefit. Right here on this Figueroa corridor. We have numerous other cases that have been prosecuted and will be prosecuted. But I'd like to now turn the podium over to the other law enforcement officials who are here, who can tell you about the federal, state, county, and city efforts to go after these human traffickers. We'll turn it over then to law enforcement as well to describe law enforcement's efforts in these regards. And then you'll hear from Alia Azaraya, a survivor victim, who will tell you what she and her experiences were all about and what she is doing to help victims who are going through this situation. So let me now turn it over to Acting United States Attorney Joseph T. McNally.
Good morning. My name is Joe McNally. I'm the Acting United States Attorney. And we're here today, as the District Attorney said, because there's nothing more important than protecting the most vulnerable members of our society. That is our children. The problem of human trafficking right here in the Figueroa corridor is substantial. Sex traffickers come both here locally and from out of state. They use and they traffic minors like commodities, and all for personal profit. The victims here are youth. They come from foster homes. They're often the most vulnerable members of our society. Addressing this problem, as the District Attorney said, requires all of us to come together in a whole-of-government approach. And that is what we have been doing for over the last year. All of us here together are committed to aggressively investigating, prosecuting, and working with community partners to solve the problems here. Let me talk a little bit about our work and some of our goals on the federal side. As you know, our law enforcement partners at the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, and other law enforcement agencies do fantastic work in this area. What we bring to the table as the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI, Homeland Security, is working these cases as long-term strategic enterprise cases. We bring our resources to focus to bear on sex trafficking involving minors and other individuals who are often using these minors, not just here in the Figueroa corridor, but trafficking them in Las Vegas and elsewhere. Let me talk about a couple of cases that we've brought recently that I think demonstrate to all of you the gravity of the criminal conduct here. United States versus O'Neill was a case that we brought in the last year. There, the defendant transported 2 minors, including a 13-year-old girl, across state lines to engage in prostitution. The defendant in that case was a violent pimp. He forced the girls to work not only here in Figueroa, but also in Las Vegas. He forced them to transfer between here and Las Vegas, and we have video footage putting 13-year-old minor right here in the Figueroa corridor who he forced to work the blade. That defendant has been indicted and faces substantial charges. Let me be clear what I mean when I talk about substantial charges. We're talking about pursuing life sentences. United States versus Bradford is a case that we brought last year. There, the defendant would recruit girls from foster care to work as prostitutes for him. He'd film himself having sex with 13-year-old children. One of those girls said she wanted to stop, and he proceeded over video to commit despicable acts. He was tried, convicted, and ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. I want to thank the District Attorney for his leadership here, the City Attorney's Office. This is truly a whole-of-government approach that prosecutors' offices are aggressive on, but we're fully supported by the leaders at the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, and the many others in the region. And there's a lot of work to be done here, and we look forward to continue to work with our partners. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to introduce Los Angeles Assistant City Attorney Scott Marcus.
Good morning. I'm Scott Marcus. I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney for the City of Los Angeles, Interim Chief of the Criminal Branch. I'm here speaking on behalf of Los Angeles City Attorney Heidi Feldstein-Soto, who regrets she cannot attend this important press conference today. We'd like to thank our District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, for his leadership and for bringing us together to highlight our collective efforts to combat sex trafficking along the Figueroa corridor. For too long, this neighborhood has been an epicenter of sexual exploitation and violence. Since day one of taking office, combating sex trafficking of minors has been a top priority for the City Attorney, and she has brought the resources of the Criminal Branch, the Public Rights Branch, and the Real Estate Branch to these efforts. As you know, the City Attorney is the Chief Prosecutor for all criminal misdemeanors committed by adults in city limits. Our office prosecutes Johns and Pimps for misdemeanors. We also bring civil and regulatory enforcement actions, including nuisance abatement and permit revocations for motels and other businesses that have become significant crime magnets. Our objectives for this work include helping our kids and human trafficking victims leave the life and find a better path, disrupting the Johns and the demand along what is known as the kiddie stroll, an area of prostitution and trafficking that features young victims and minors, stopping the illegal activity of motels and other businesses, and holding predators and profiteers accountable. Last year, we formed a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional task force with Mayor Bass, Council President Harris Dawson, and the LAPD, whose leadership has been instrumental in the success of our joint effort. This task force was formed with the goal of implementing a comprehensive and whole-of-government approach to the work. Together, we have been leveraging our respective resources and authorities to ensure a seamless coordination in the areas of prevention, enforcement, and victim support. The City Attorney's Office has had a number of successes. Last year, we secured a guilty verdict against a 49-year-old man charged with 3 misdemeanors, including solicitation of prostitution from a minor, a 14-year-old girl. His conviction requires him to register as a sex offender. We are also focused on significant problematic locations, ecosystems of illegal activity, using California's red light abatement law, public nuisance law, and unfair competition law. In October, we sued the owner of the Sun Motel, which we allege is an anchor of violent and escalating criminal activity in the clutches of a criminal street gang. Since 2020, it has been the site of at least 7 shootings, over 30 arrests by LAPD, and the recovery of 14 loaded firearms, plus numerous investigations of trafficking, sexual assaults, robberies, carjacking, and sales of narcotics. We successfully litigated a nuisance abatement lawsuit against the New Gage Motel, resulting in a judgment for the people, including a 1-year closure of the motel, civil penalties, and a 10-year injunction upon its reopening. In doing so, we did not forget the women who were living in that hotel, who had already been victimized, and we worked to resettle and find alternative housing for approximately 40 women who were there. We also work with our city's planning department to get use permits revoked when motel owners fail to clean up their businesses, even after repeated requests from the LAPD and from the city attorney's office. The 108 Motel was declared a public nuisance and has been demolished. The New Bay Motel, Boulevard Motel, and Highlight Motel all had their use permits revoked to ensure code compliance, and the Magic Carpet Inn, Broadway Inn, and the Foxy Motel each had conditions imposed upon them to mitigate adverse public nuisance impacts. And our work is continuing. We have numerous other investigations and have conversations underway with other businesses in the vicinity, and we have made tremendous strides on behalf of the victims. In addition to the women who we found housing, we have assisted 183 juveniles, the youngest of which was 11 years old. We've provided assistance to 22 adults. Nearly 2,000 Johns have received Dear John letters, and more than 190 perpetrators and pimps were arrested or cited. This includes 66 felony pimping and pandering arrests, 68 human trafficking arrests, and 85 supervising prostitution arrests. We are going to expand this initiative to the Valley because we now have a blueprint that works. Our focus on human trafficking has exposed loopholes in our state laws that the city attorney is working to strengthen as well. For anyone watching who wants to get out of this life, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. The city attorney would like to recognize some dedicated and talented attorneys from her office who are working on these efforts. Khalil Rashid and Laura Drino from the criminal branch. In addition, our line prosecutors who handle the cases on a day-to-day basis, such as Ralston Henry, who secured the guilty verdict I mentioned before, Leora Foreman-Eccles from the Public Rights branch, and Chuck Sewell from the real estate branch. Thank you.
Our next speaker shows us that the problem of human trafficking is not limited to the Figueroa corridor, but there is human trafficking, unfortunately, throughout Los Angeles County. I'd now like to introduce Long Beach City Prosecutor Doug Halbert.
Good morning. My name is Doug Halbert, and I have the honor and privilege of serving the people of Long Beach as their elected city prosecutor. The first thing I wanted to say this morning was to commend the district attorney and to thank him for making this a priority in his administration. As everyone knows, the district attorney has a number of problems to address, and the fact that he took this as an issue that needs to be addressed first gives me great hope. The city of Long Beach, of course, is the second largest city in Los Angeles County. I've been a city prosecutor for 25 years. I've also been the past president of the Los Angeles County Prosecutors Association. So I know I speak on behalf of my own city and all the cities that we are here to work with the district attorney and our local law enforcement agencies to combat human trafficking. I want to note that we cannot combat human trafficking, any one of us alone. This is going to require multi-jurisdictional cooperation. That's why it is so important, and I am so glad to see so many agencies represented this morning working together. In addition to having a multi-agency or multi-jurisdictional approach, I'll also say that we're not going to combat human trafficking unless we have a strategic and comprehensive approach to the problem. We're not going to arrest our way out of this problem, and enforcement is only part of the strategy. I'm happy to hear about services being offered. In fact, in Long Beach, we have provided services to people who are trying to get out of the life for years. The very first law enforcement assisted diversion program in California was a pilot program along the Long Beach Boulevard track from North Long Beach into Compton and to Linwood. That was a pilot program funded by the state that proved that we can get people off the streets and into treatment. We are not going to be successful unless we have a strategy to provide services to people who have been victims of human trafficking and of pimping. So I'm glad that we are also looking at a comprehensive approach here as well. The last thing I would like to say is that as the city prosecutor of Long Beach, I've had the honor of working directly with Sheriff Robert Luna when he was police chief of the city of Long Beach. And I had the pleasure of working with Jim McDonald when he was both the sheriff of LA County and the police chief of Long Beach. Leadership like that, as committed and as passionate to this issue as he is going to serve all of us well. Thank you very much for coming today.